IoT Unplugged, where we talk to industry leaders, innovators, and major players in the Internet of Things, bringing you the best and latest insights. Tune in to learn more. In this episode, João Pereira, Director General Embedded Market for EMEA at QNX, talks to me about robotics adoption following the UK's industrial strategy and shares recommendations for businesses deploying robots. Hi, João. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Could you start us off with an introduction to who you are and what you do?
Okay, sure. So thanks for having me here. So my name is João Pereira. I'm the director of EMEA for the general embedded market at QNX. So basically, I'm covering all the industries that are non-automotive. So all like medical, industrial automation, rail, robotics, defense. These are the industries that I'm covering for Europe, Middle East, and Africa for the company.
Great. And could you introduce QNX as well?
Sure. So QNX is a Canadian company with 45 years old, so quite a long time in the market. And we were acquired by BlackBerry roughly 15 years ago. So right now we are one division of the two that BlackBerry has. And we are one of the leaders in providing high performance operating systems, hypervisors, middleware solutions, and development tools designed for mission critical embedded systems. So, as I said, about main industries we cover, I already mentioned, so automotive. It represents roughly two-thirds of our revenue, and then the remaining third comes from industrial automation, defense, energy, medical, transportation, and more. So all these critical systems that require most of the time safety and security components, then they rely on QNX.
Great. No, thank you for that overview. To frame our conversation today, we'll be talking a little bit about one of the areas in which you work, which is robotics, and discussing adoption. But before we get into that, I thought it would be helpful first to talk a little bit about the UK's newly released Modern Industrial Strategy. They released it back in June. For those who aren't aware, it's obviously quite a big publication, predominantly because it does look at how robotics can help with some of its aims. So could you talk us through what those aims are, how robotics could help, improve the UK economy?
Yeah, sure. So it's quite recent. So just a few months ago, and well, basically the robotics appears as one of the central pieces towards automation and increasing the country's productivity and global competitiveness. So regarding robotics, it really highlights as one of the key for efficient manufacturing, I would say. Also, in terms of healthcare innovation, all these top value services that can be provided around robotics, and of course, this framework also includes support from the government to speed up adoption and workforce training. So I think it's an important document that provides guidance and some view on how the robotics will get more relevant in the industry.
I mean, in your position, how do you see robotics adoption from region to region? What have you observed in countries? Because there's of course wanting to use robotics as a driver, and then maybe where you are realistically.
Yeah. So we, as part of our marketing activities, we did a global research, including roughly 1,000 leaders in IT companies, where we tried to dig in about their perceptions, their perspectives on how this market will evolve. So there are, of course, great findings that we got, and some are more generic. Others are. Then we did it also for some geographies, and UK is one of the regions that we covered. So um, I would say the main key findings we had for UK is so almost two-thirds of the UK industrial decision makers are planning to introduce robotic technology. So this is amazing and a great number. Um, and their main drivers for this adoption is well, 90% of the majority is cost reductions. That's quite obvious. And also safety improvements. So these are like key trends that they responded to us. Uh, but on the other side, there are like one third of the respondents are uncertain about the timeline for the rollout. So it seems that there is a wish to move forward, but when is the question? And uh, when then we would try to ask, okay, but why you think that there is no clear timeline for the rollout? Like roughly 30% believes that the current robotics policies and regulamentations are inadequate. So they see clear and clear guidelines on ethical use as a significant concern. So yeah, let's say they feel that we need to have a clear legal framework about safety, security, how robots will interact with humans in a work plant, and all these things all these problematics that can arrive on top of this interaction between humans and robots. Because in one side, it's so, and we see a lot of, for example, robot arms already deployed in industrial environment, but most of the times they are covered by a fence, so a physical fence that doesn't allow humans to interact with the robot. But in the moment you have interactions, and this will be the future because the need will be there. You need to bring safety and security to the robot so that they can slow down when a person gets close or even stop so that people don't get hurt by a robot. So, and all this thematic is there's of course um, some legal framework that needs to be developed.
I was just about to ask you, do you think it's just a question of maybe industry feeding back to the government and saying we need guidance on this, we need this clarified because like you've just raised, there's some really important aspects that need to be looked at.
Yeah. I think let's say I think yeah. For example, I'm joining some forums about robotics and also with the IFR, the International Federation for Robotics, and there are a lot of discussions just about how to define a robot and then where drones fit in the robots. And so there are these concepts, and the definition, the clear definition is still evolving. And the regulation, of course, it will follow that. So I think when we see that there will be really uh, more implementation, then the legislation will need to follow. We know this process takes time, and of course we have some certification, some guidance already to help and support on the development of robotics. But of course, the decision makers are concerned about the implications that this will have in the work labor. So what happens if a robot kills a person, and so there's a lot of concern around how to develop robots on a safe and secure way.
It's interesting too because you mentioned robot arm, which is maybe what people working in the industry would, you know, be well aware of and familiar with the image of. But you've obviously got talk of humanoid robotics, and companies working on it want that rolled out, and they want them to do everything a person can do. But then you think about the legal implications. There's obviously a lot that needs to be worked through, and it's quite thorny. Yeah.
Yeah. So we see a boom of humanoids in China mostly, and the way that they interact. And recently, just by curiosity, I think they organized the World Championship of Robotics, and we saw some movies. They running and fighting a box and so on. So let's say most of these developments are done with open source systems like Linux, and then depends on the manufacturer of the robots, the safety features that they bring on it. So what the industry is claiming on a more generic approach is to have a legal framework that says what kind of requirements a robot needs to fulfill to be safety certified, like we have in other industries. So, like in the automotive industry, in the, where, for example, with all the autonomous driving and all this thematic around it. So we need to define what kind of rules are required to reach a certain level of certification and on safety, so that people feel comfortable to adopt these technologies. So I think this is the what is still missing.
I think you're touching on a really good point here, which leads me nicely onto my next question, which is about public perception of robotics. I'm just going to pause. What do you think current public perception of robotics adoption is, particularly when you talk about things like the competition they had in Beijing recently and seeing, robots kicking around balls and running. What are you seeing from the public and maybe even the wider industry?
Yeah, good question. So let's say we see governments policy strongly encourages robotics deployment because they see this is something that will improve the economic competitiveness. Uh, but public and the workforce perception has evolved, but still shows ambivalence. So, in our research, we found that I think like 75% of the technology leaders now trust robots for essential workplace functions. But the trust drops when we talk about tasks that involve a higher human interaction, like medical procedures, customer service. Here, less than roughly half of the answers we got are comfortable. So, and these negative perceptions are related to lost job, security, ethics, uh, also the risk of over reliance on the technology persists. So this kind of um, yeah, like let's say even as overall attitudes become more positive, especially where safety and productivity benefits are well demonstrated, but there is still like a gap between um, the perception to do some tasks that, as I said, if you have a robot within a fence, everyone sees it great. But in the moment you start interacting with humans, is when the perception from the public drops.
I think it does make sense, right? Because you're looking at uh, robots doing surgeries, and I think when something is new and not well established, and maybe there are still question marks in people's heads, it stands to reason that they would maybe be uncomfortable with the thought of a robot operating someone without even knowing.
But on the other side, let me share with you. We have a customer in the south of France that develop surgical robots, and the level of complexity and technology applied in these surgical robots. They gave me a demo about surgery on the spine, using cameras to adapt to the robot arm to the movement of the body. Because if you are laying down on a bed to have the surgery, if you move your body, then the robots will adjust immediately to that movement. So after seeing that, I felt that if I would any day to have a surgery in my spine, I would prefer to have a robot, because the level of precision is much higher than a human can execute. So, and this kind of so the best of the worlds is to have the best surgeon and the best robot. But definitely having a robot arm and the surgical robots doing the or helping on the surgery, it's increases the success of that. So this perception depends also on the industries. There are industries like medical where we take care about complex operations using robots, and this has evolved significantly. So the level of trust is also much higher than in the industrial environment. So I think the industrial can also learn from medical and adopt some of the measures that they had to reach this level of safety.
That's really interesting. Yeah. On that note, then, what do you think needs to be done to improve or accelerate robotics adoptions? What do you see being the main hurdles with everything that we've spoken about?
So, well, in our survey, we have some findings around this. Let's say the workplace readiness, it's of course important. So you need to think that you need to have your workplace adapted to receive robots. And if you want to interact both humans and robots, then definitely you need to think on this workplace readiness. Uh, yeah, security concerns. I would say this is in the top of the concerns and that they need to adopt robots. So yeah, the safety, security risks. For example, in Germany, it's curious that the risk for the people, the number of answers we got for how they perceive the risk is much higher in Germany than in the UK or even in China. So in China, the perception for the risk is much lower than in West countries, and Germany is especially high regarding security concerns. Then there is another dimension that has to do with the workforce and the skilled gaps that we have in our um, workforce. So uh, employers struggle to source and train talent, robots, and AI expertise. So there's a huge need for people that understands and can uh, develop these technologies. And well, and we also mentioned the regulatory uncertainty, so we already spoke about that. But I think these four dimensions, so workplace readiness, security, skill gaps, and regulatory uncertainty are the main needs to accelerate robotics adoption.
I don't know if you've seen, but there are some really interesting companies working in the space of skills shortages. So there's one company which I won't name for fear of maybe appearing too promotional, but there's one company who offer tooling or software that's quite easy to code. So those who aren't super technical and those who aren't super familiar with what it takes to program robots are given, I think it might be low code. They're given this tool, and even if you don't have tons of training, you're able to program robots, and that's just one thing that they're doing to address that. Because I've had people mention it to me before that a lack of, I think the term is roboticists, is one of the impediments on the industry at the moment and kind of prohibiting further growth. So I thought it was interesting that you mentioned that. Were there any findings from your survey or any learnings that you took from your perspective at QNX that you thought were worth? I don't know, any learnings that you took on that made you guys think about how you could move forward?
Yeah, so well, we of course we wanted to understand how the perception about adoption of robotics and what needs to be accelerated. Um, of course, for us, and we offer like the foundational software to develop these robots. So for us, it's critical, and the customers we work for, they really are concerned about how to reach safe and secure robots. So they, because if, for example, if you think I want to have a robot at my home to cut the grass or to like these iRobots or these companies, so you don't really need to develop thinking on the safety or security of it. So maybe with now with cybersecurity, and we don't want people to get into your robots that you have already at home, but these are not our main targets. So our main, the customers that are using QNX are the ones that are developing surgical robots or robots that will interact with humans, and they really are concerned about how to achieve a level of safety for their critical systems that they can uh, ensure to their end customers that the robots are executing exactly as expected, and that there will not be breaches in security or that they will not hurt anyone. So, and for that perspective, uh, having operating system that already has a level of certification saves them a lot of time, because then they can focus on the development of the applications that will run and on top of the operating system, and not developing everything from scratch. So um, and this is where, for example, I'm talking about medical. In medical robotics, uh, 9 of the top 10 worldwide companies, they use QNX just because they can accelerate their development process, and they can already reach a faster certification process, because, if, for example, in North America, they need to get the certification with FDA, and when they demonstrate that they did their development using QNX, they get a lot of ticks in the box already in this checklist of requirements to achieve the certification, safety certification of their final product. Because these organizations like FDA, they already certified and validated a lot of robots and devices that were developed using QNX, so they know how safe we are and the kind of procedures we bring in place. So, of, when we talk about robotics, it's a huge market. We are not really covering all the market. We are focusing on the critical robots and systems.
So I think that leads me nicely onto my next question, which is what are some of the things that can be done to simplify robot deployment? And I mean, you just spoke about how how QNX is can kind of act as a foundation and give that assurance. Are there any other steps that you would put forward?
Yeah, well, I would say, yeah, adopting high assurance certified software platforms such as QNX, mostly to mitigate risks and speed compliance. So if you want to really simplify deployments, you cannot always try to invent the wheel from the every time you want to develop. So if you adopt a certified software platform as your foundational software, then you can develop your own applications, but you are relying already in this very strong foundation. Then another dimension is really accelerating standards development and pre-approved frameworks for industries with safety critical needs. So you, if you are, again, I'm talking a lot about medical, but there are frameworks that are specific for medical. So you need to adopt these frameworks in order to accelerate and simplify your development. Uh, and then, well, we live in a connected world, so you need to provide plug and play models and APIs to connect with other solutions, training materials, yeah, and support. And here, the government and its plans are important. Support SMEs to lower entry barriers so that they can, uh, yeah, also work closely with universities, with incubators that have this willingness to innovate and to develop new things.
Do you think there's a way that these steps you just mentioned, these learnings, can be effectively communicated with other businesses who are involved in, deploying robots and need a little bit of guidance?
Yeah, well, definitely. So there are usually these industries live in kind of in close clusters. So my strong recommendation is to try to go also outside of the industry. For example, if you are in industrial automation, go also and listen what other industries are doing, namely automotive, because they are one of the leading industries right now. Or you can, of course, join different benchmarking initiatives, forums. There are also some government-supported knowledge hubs that can be helpful to understand better. And yeah, on our side, and also our research reinforces that structured employee involvement like cross-disciplinary teams and change like champions, help other companies to replicate success stories. So we always try to, for example, because we in my specific case that I'm covering multiple industries, so everything but automotive, there are a lot of learns that I use and examples that I give when I'm talking with a defense company that has a certain problematic that they want to achieve, and they can benefit from our knowledge that we bring from other industries. And in robotics is the same. So there are um, for example, with the use of cameras that we use for other industries. Um, for example, we have now a customer that is using QNX in their AMR, so autonomous mobile robots, to transport boxes inside a warehouse, and they are using uh, high complex cameras to detect everything that is around. So this kind of technology that is also used, for example, in a surgical robot, because they use the same type of cameras to determine the position, the distance, and so on. So these multiple inputs that we are getting from different industries are also an asset that we share with our customers.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think knowledge sharing, but also communicating with other industries and seeing what they're learning from it. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to mention to our listeners?
Yeah, well, I think yeah, well, from the point of view, well, it was a pleasure to join and this conversation. I think there's a lot of going on right now about these robotics. The We will see more and more. So I believe 10 years from now, we will have much more robotics already interacting with us. And the speed of adoption development is really huge. So here in Europe, we don't have sometimes the visibility of what's happening in China and how they are moving this forward. So my strong recommendation for those that are thinking in adopting robotics or developing robotics, you should really try to rely on partners that can help you to faster the development and learn from also the lessons learned that companies like QNX can provide you on a way to accelerate your development.
It's a good note to end on, I think, and certainly there'll be lots, I'm sure, coming in the future. So thank you so much for joining me and for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure.
IoT Unplugged.